You are listening to Sect Respect with Lewis Lovelace. Warning, listening to this podcast confirms that you are a free thinker and therefore a threat to the establishment. Stay vigilant. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Sect Respect. First off, before we begin, thank you very much to my patrons, as usual. There will be, I will elaborate on a new business venture that I've come up with later on in the episode. For now, let's get down to our guests. We have returning guests, Dr. Richard Fleeb, PhD.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure, Doctor. And the individual who identifies herself as Gina, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you for not making me repeat it one more time.
You do understand that Dr. Biddison is not here on the show with us today.
He's not here on the show, but he is taking up free real estate in my mind. I haven't been able to get his face, his stupid little little weaselly face out of my head, and I have been doing some research on him, and I know this show's not about that, but I just want to give a little shout out.
It is not. I would recommend
look him up.
Extensive psychotherapy. Anyway, our third guest, someone who has assured me is a guest of very high esteem, Edwin John Fairweather III, and the audience should be very familiar with Dr. Fleeb and Gina, but Mr. Fairweather, what exactly is your occupation? What do you?
Thank you for having me. By the way, Larry, I am feeling to be here. I am an heir and a man of business and society.
All right. What is the nature of said business, Mr. Fairweather?
We're in every business.
Very, very well. Well, hopefully, your business experience will be able to offer some insight into into today's topic, the death or assassination ? Of Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite. Dr. Fleeb, let's start with you. You are the historian here, so what is the official academic take on the death of President Garthwaite?
The actual official medical record puts it down as asphyxiation, which means when the human body can't get air into the brain or lungs anymore, causing it to asphyxiate. Which is what happened to him.
He basically choked to death is essentially what you're saying.
Yes. Essentially, that's what happened. He took a sip of water after his speech, and it to use the normal parlance, it went down the wrong pipe.
Right. I believe we're all rather familiar with the mechanics of that. You drink a bit of water, you start to cough.
It was too much.
Right. That actually allows me to segue into our next guest, Gina. Choking on water doesn't necessarily kill us half of the time. And Gina, before we started taping the show, you let me know of your opinion on it if you would like to share with our audience today.
Right. Well, my opinion is not much of a secret. I've been a widespread, evangelist on this point. And obviously, choking on water and dying, unless you made Jesus really mad, that's not going to happen. Okay. He choked for the people to see, right? It was a big show. He fell. Oh, he was rushed away immediately. Everyone took him No one saw him again. Where's the medical examiner report? No one can find it. It was like that 7 minutes didn't even happen. Why? Because he was secreted away to tunnels underneath the White House, where he sat on a throne and puppeted the government. Harding didn't want to talk to him because talk about him because he hated him. You guys are out of your minds. He didn't want to talk about him because he was an idiot. He was afraid he'd accidentally spill secrets.
Dr. Fleeb, we will get to you. We will get to you, Dr. Fleeb. We will get to you in just a second. I would like to hear.
We were just at you, so
Mr. Fairweather's opinions on it, and then we will open the table up.
Oh yes, let's wait for Mr. Fairweather.
I'm sorry. Did you say my name with an air of disdain? Dr. Florg, or whatever your name is?
Dr. Fleeb, I would like to, Dr. Biddison and Gina both made this mistake on the last episode. I would ask that an air of mutual self-respect be observed. On
show respect for your betters.
I feel like bringing up the past is pretty much also just as rude.
Mr. Fairweather, Mr. Fairweather, what is your opinion on the death of Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite?
I don't know why we're rehashing this. It is settled history. He choked on water and stumbled off of a dais downstairs and broke his neck like a moron would. He died an embarrassing death, and any suggestion that a conspiracy was involved is just someone who doesn't want to accept that the man died as he lived, a pointless, embarrassing failure.
All right.
So we have before we open the table up for discussion, just a summary for the audience. We have two distinct and yet common opinions that Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite indeed died choking on water. Whether it was the choking or the falling that killed him, there is agreement for two of our guests that he is in fact dead. Gina, on the other hand, posits that Garthwaite did not actually die that day. If everybody is okay with it, I would like to open it up to the minority opinion first and explore the not death opinion. If that is okay with everybody, I want to. This is a platform of free speech and participation is encouraged.
It's your podcast.
Very well. Gina, elaborate on why you believe that President Garthwaite did not in fact die while choking on water or falling off the dais that day.
Garthwaite became a figure that was too big for America. And that's the long and short of it. And he had a lot of enemies. To say, now I want to go back and rewind a little bit, because he did not die. He was not assassinated. That's not to say that there weren't about 20 assassins in that crowd. You can go through the pictures and see them who made attempts on his life. And he was just so big and so important that he knew he had to hide himself for the good of the country, because it wasn't long until one of them was going to get through and get him. So they secreted him away. He lived under the White House, and for 30 years, he was our president. The best president we had. He got us through so many dark times in our history.
Right. So you believe that there was some sort of cover-up, essentially, some sort of.
Obviously, you can look and go through, and you'll see actors placed in the crowd. Actors that you've seen. You look at other historical photos, and you'll see the same ones. This is an ongoing theme with the Garthwaite family, by the way, as I mentioned in the last episode. But you'll see them in there. People that you'll see in other background crowds, and they've been taking shots at him. It was back in the olden days. It wasn't the internet where you could do like facial recognition. So it was like easier to be like, I'm just put a mustache on and now I'm going to try it again. And no one noticed, right? It was different times.
Dr. Fleeb or Mr. Fairweather, is there perhaps an academic, or Mr. Fairweather, I apologize, I don't know what you actually do, some sort of anecdotal response to
again, I am an heir and a man of business and society. My family owns a great many businesses and have for a little over 200 years.
Fairweather.
Right.
Interesting.
Dr. Fleeb, as an academic.
Knowing what you're talking about. Look, here's the thing. Garthwaite's death, Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite, was in fact an incredible person, and she's not entirely wrong that his death was predetermined, that it needed to happen in order to galvanize everything.
Yes, to end the long national nightmare of him existing.
Mr. Fairweather, if Dr. Fleeb may continue, and then I will ask you for your response.
I deign to allow him.
I appreciate that. Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite was such an incredible person, had done so much even before he took the stage for his speech. The universe understood that he couldn't continue because it would have brought pure utopia to the world too soon. We wouldn't have earned it. So the universe itself took him back. And that's why he fell down those stairs after choking.
So Dr. Fleeb, as the academic, you posit that some sort of metaphysical quality of Garthwaite's existence.
As an absolute academic, yes, I openly state that it was fate itself that took him. Granted, the university I had been working with, and I disagree on that, which is why I'm looking for a new residence right now, but I stand by what I said.
Once again, I agree with about half of what you said.
Gina,
he was too
and
good
I
for this
agree
world.
About half of what you said.
You are so close.
If I may,
You're almost there.
Gina, Mr. Fairweather needs to be given a chance to respond. Mr. Fairweather, if you may.
First of all, I want to be clear that I agree with nothing either of you have said. But he didn't die because of fate or the universe. I don't believe in fate or destiny or an intelligent universe. He died precisely for the reason that he was an incompetent man with an incompetent throat and incompetent feet.
Wait, how are his feet incompetent?
Absolutely
They
ridiculous. A war
couldn't
hero,
stay
a
in a
mascot.
They couldn't stay in a standing position on a stage.
It is in record that he not only had excellent feet, they were wide. The army actually had to order special boots.
That's true.
I've heard about the special boots.
Yes.
What kind of a man can't fit perfectly good army boots?
A man
that's his shoes are too big to fill, is what we're saying.
That's right. The reason the pyramids of Giza are still standing is because the base is so wide. Such is
yes, so he shouldn't have been able to fall down so
and
easily
he didn't.
with
He
his
did it
wide
on
feet
purpose.
and low center of gravity.
So, Mr. Fairweather, you're saying that Garthwaite was essentially a victim of his own hubris.
No, I am saying he was a victim of his own existence, as is anyone who's had to think about him.
And so actually, double checking my own notes here, the incident you were referring to of Rufus falling down in line in the military is before they realized he needed the wide boots. He fell down in service of his country.
A hero.
He sacrificed.
He's not even listening. Why is this man even on your show? He's
sorry, I was checking my matches on.
I
was checking my matches on the league. What?
You were checking your matches on
generally yes. Summarizing, you seem to hold a very dim opinion of Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite. Just for the audience sake, would you mind exploring exactly why? It seems that most of the guests that I have had on here have a somewhat positive opinion, and I would like to get the
my family has had in its history a great deal of interaction with the Garthwaite family, with Rufus in particular.
Fairweather?
What?
Fairweather.
Yes, Fairweather.
As Fairweather sugar?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're saying you're heir to the Fairweather fortune?
You are the one who asked me to be on this show. Did you not do research into who I am?
I didn't realize this is someone I would be talking to.
I would like to clarify
changes
that
your whole opinion on everything he says, doesn't it?
You were the one that at first contacted me about being a guest on this podcast. With very little elaboration other than
I had been told that a lot of people were saying nice things about Garthwaite on this podcast, and I thought that could not stand.
The greatest thing that ever happened to your family was
Garthwaite.
Garthwaite.
Every bit of trouble my family has ever had stems from that decision. We never had trouble before that.
Your family to be doing well.
We're doing extremely well.
There you go.
Because he died, we would be ruined if he had stayed alive.
Huh. Right. And if you look at those pictures, how many Fairweathers do you think you see with those phony mustaches on that are waiting with those guns in their pockets, waiting to pull the trigger? How many do you think there are?
First of all, I can tell you now, there are 17 Fairweathers in those photos. Those are the ones who were present at that event. And they weren't there for assassination purposes.
Oh.
They were high society people being invited to the event of the season and inauguration. Those mustaches aren't disguises. Those are cold weather mustaches.
Were they happy with Garthwaite, or did they want to kill him? You can't have it both ways.
And did they murder
Neither. They disliked him, but when you're in society, sometimes you turn up for events involving people you dislike to show how much better you are while you're there.
Mr. Fairweather,
the worst things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Mr. Fairweather, if I had known that you were that Fairweather, I would have asked this question at the start. But
where do you get
Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite is in effect your ancestor. I believe.
I would like for you to take that back.
No, wait. No, he's right. Aren't you a direct descendant of Beatrice Fairweather?
Beatrice Fairweather.
Oh, I am a direct descendant of one of her siblings.
Which one?
Oh, which one? Yeah, excellent question.
Gareth
Fairweather.
Gareth Fairweather.
However, assuming that we all call our aunts and uncles our ancestors as well, or our grand aunts and grand uncles, they are considered our ancestors.
I would consider, I'm not a direct descendant, I would consider Beatrice Fairweather an ancestor for most of her life, except for the period in which she was married to Garthwaite. For those years, not an ancestor. He dies ancestor again.
This is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
That is a very unique take on the concept of ancestry. But Mr. Fairweather, would you also say that your current status is a direct consequence of Rufus Garthwaite's management of Fairweather Sugar?
No, I will tell you now. I am a billionaire. I do firmly believe, had he not taken over Fairweather Sugar for that period of time, I would be a trillionaire, if not more.
Well, he really screwed up your life, didn't he? What a monster.
I never known anything different, but imagine the riches I could know.
I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode of Sect Respect, and that is you. Actually, yes, this episode was funded entirely by the contributions of the patrons into the new Coinspiracy crypto platform, or the CCP, a new business venture that I have concocted with a friend of mine, or actually a friend of said friend. Anyway, CCP is a platform that you can trade various different cryptocurrencies, as well as a currency that we here at Sect Respect have created, the Coinspiracy. If you believe in a deregulated financial system and also the concept of sovereign citizenship, I would encourage you to check out CCP. There are links on my website, sectrespect.com. Thank you again to all of my lovely patrons who have contributed your generous donations, or in fact, your participation in this business venture is what keeps this podcast alive. And together we will expose the big banks for the sort of scams that they are.
Listen, I didn't come on this podcast to feel attacked.
Mr. Fairweather,
He's in the middle of an ad, rude.
Please understand that these segments have to be edited into the middle of the podcast, so any interjections have to make it very difficult for my editor. But anyway, we are now back. I would like to open up the discussion again to the topic of Rufus Garthwaite's death. Where we left off, I was about to mention that this is a platform of free speech, and I would like to grab minority opinions above all else. And a friend of mine who could not be on this podcast today was talking about this topic, the topic of Rufus Garthwaite's death, and he proposed a very interesting theory in that perhaps Rufus Garthwaite was not killed by his own incompetence or by the will of the universe or whatever Dr. Fleeb is proposing. And he is certainly dead, but by assassination via cyanide poisoning in the glass of water that he was drinking. And let me break down this theory before I open it up to responses. Ohio, where Warren G. Harding ran most of his campaign, is a well-known spot for growing cherry trees. And the thing about cherries is, if you don't know, the seeds can actually be crushed, and the insides of those seeds have cyanide in them. And with sufficient dilution, the cyanide can remain deadly without suggesting any flavors of cherry. The friend of a friend posits that on the morning of the inauguration speech, someone had tainted the jug of water that Garthwaite had filled his glass of water with these powdered cherry seeds. And this person was paid by the campaign managers of Warren G. Harding. Whether or not Warren G. Harding himself was involved is unclear, but this is the sort of theory that was presented to me, and now I present it to you, my guests, to respond to. Whoever would like to go first.
I'd like to start first.
Dr. Fleeb, please.
Your friend of a friend is a fucking idiot.
I would agree with that. Your friend of a friend is a fucking idiot.
I would like to discourage any ad hominem. Please, if you have any evidence.
What did you just call me?
Logical arguments to bring up.
Look, obviously the pitcher of water wasn't poisoned, you plebeian.
Mr. Fairweather.
Plenty of people drank out of that pitcher of water.
Mr. Fleeb.
Calvin Coolidge himself drank out of it moments before refilling it.
If I may, Mr. Fairweather, I actually also asked the friend of a friend this exact question. Why didn't anybody else die on that day? And he had said to me that apparently it is tradition, or at least it was a 19th century tradition, for the president-elect to have his own pitcher of water as a way to distinguish himself from his other colleagues. And also, I believe it was insisted on Garthwaite himself that he have his own set of cups that only he could use, his own pitcher of water, his own source of water, his own personal well on the White House lawn that he could draw water from.
Seems very, very anti-Garthwaite. He was a big sharer in more ways than one, an oversharer, some would say, and to have his own pitcher doesn't seem right. I feel like it would be.
You could argue that he was in some ways a kleptomaniac, and that he.
It was noted by people present that Coolidge
drank
very
from the pitcher.
Drank from that pitcher right before refilling it. People were affronted by it because it was seen as so rude. But Calvin Coolidge was widely known to buck social norms.
It should be noted that while it was a tradition for the president-elect to drink from their own cups, the pitcher was shared amongst everyone in the House until 1972, mostly due to the assassination of JFK. It had nothing to do with the inauguration or anything. It was just paranoia.
It is true. It is also documented, however, that Coolidge did drink specifically from Garthwaite's cup and said, "Fuck this nerd," and then he licked the rim of it, and then he licked a muffin Garthwaite was about to eat.
Well, I don't know about the rest of that, but the jug I know. That's right. We'll just end it there. Everyone's quiet. Perfect. Everyone agrees.
I would add that it is possible in my mind that Calvin Coolidge, first off, a little background. Calvin Coolidge was a lawyer before he got involved in politics, correct?
Lawyers don't drink out of jugs, apparently.
For the
He
state
came from a time
of,
when being a lawyer was, I'm just literally writing a letter to yourself saying, I'm a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer.
right. However, the state of the law profession was also quite dangerous in that losing a case could mean a potential ill will from your sorts of clients.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
I posit.
Please pause it faster.
Calvin, or my friend or friend posits that Calvin.
Stop bringing up your friend of a friend.
And
it's
also,
getting old. Either
Calvin
give us a
Coolidge
name or
here
make
in
your
his
own
time as a
name.
lawyer,
This
was
is also
exposed to
a very
so much
easy
cyanide and
theory to
so
come
much
up with
poison
because,
that he
no,
developed an
absolutely
immunity.
ridiculous. Oh, how
Cyanide.
To talk about
I believe he is also an accessory.
You're a fool.
to,
It is
the
strychnine that
assassination
most lawyers are
attempt
immune
that-
to.
I posit that he was
You
an accessory to the assassination of
an
Rufus
accessory
Garthwaite.
now?
You're,
Oh my God.
you sound
Whoa.
ridiculous. If
Absolutely.
anything, Coolidge would have defended him. Coolidge didn't like Garthwaite,
He
but
didn't
Coolidge
like him.
I
didn't
feel
Wasn't a
like,
suffer
man.
however, we can
violence
all
like
agree. We can all
No,
agree
do you
that
know
that
who
is
did?
more.
The Fairweathers, apparently,
more
who tried to kill him a million
plausible-
times.
It's more
Now we
plausible
hear.
than
Absolutely
an underground
ridiculous.
tunnel that
And
he would have been
it's
secreted
not more
away
plausible.
to.
Disneyland has
believe
underground
that
tunnels. Why wouldn't the White House in Washington,
Walt
D.C.,
Disney,
you fool?
Walt Disney
The
did
White
not.
House
Yeah, but we
tunnels
don't
were
need to get on
Disney
Washington,
for
D.C. Though
time.
I will say that that cryogenic
Man, I'm glad
technology
I-
is the exact same that Garthwaite has been using to keep himself alive so he can come back. Garthwaite 2048, he's going to be
Gina,
back and he's going to help bring
understand
America
that-
back to
that
where we need to be because we're in a
at the
freaking
time-
mess.
At the time, the electrical grid of the United States would not have been able to sustain a cryogenic facility. I think we all agree.
Oh, you
that
have the
that
papers.
the
You have all of
fake-
you. They didn't
that
have
the
electricity.
fake
That was
death
it. The
theory
end.
is the least plausible out of all.
I
of
didn't
them.
say he
all
died
agree on
then.
that.
I
Everyone
said
has
he
said.
didn't die then, and then he was president
It
for
did-
30 years. So tell me what the electrical wires were like then, Lovelace.
Gina,
He wasn't
Gina,
president. That is demonstrably false.
I would like
Right.
to-
Warren G.
Lewis.
Harding was president, then Calvin Coolidge.
We know that
He was no one's arguing that Warren G. Harding was president. We all know what happened.
In my
Then
life,
Herbert
I never
Hoover.
thought I would agree with a Fairweather. What is wrong with you?
Gina,
Honestly. Yes.
I have to say that if Garthwaite was indeed president for 30 years,
Yeah.
I would say, let me pull up the date so I get this right. That basically means he would have been president during the time of the Great Depression and
Right.
arguably economic failure of the
Right.
country.
Right.
All of us knowing how great Garthwaite was at running Fairweather Sugar, I
Right.
think
No.
he wouldn't have been able to run the country
False.
into a financial
Fantastic.
hole.
He didn't run it into a fight. It was called the Great Depression. It was world wars happening.
it-
Do you think that he
exactly.
could take care of
The-
everything by
the Great
himself?
Depression
Absolutely
is the
ridiculous.
single greatest piece of evidence that Garthwaite did die. Because if he hadn't,
Thank you,
the
Dr.
Great
Fleeb.
Depression
Honestly,
No.
bringing up the Great
However-
Depression.
Look.
However, if I may, real quick, Mr. Fairweather.
Real quick.
I do want to say that this one of the greatest acts of self-sacrifice Rufus Garthwaite ever gave us was actually dying, because if he hadn't, we never would have gotten Steinbeck.
I would
That's
Right.
neither
Steinbeck,
here
First
nor
of
there.
all-
I enjoy
And I will
Steinbeck.
also say,
Steinbeck
I-
was a dirty communist, so
I-
there.
I
I'm not
enjoy,
saying that
um,
Garthwaite.
You,
Look,
you
Garthwaite
filthy
was
bastard.
president
It-
for 30 years. The reason he was on
No, he
board with the
wasn't.
Great Depression is because he didn't always play by the rules, right? He was a loose cannon, right? You bring
Right.
people down sometimes, and
However,
then the upturn in
I-
the 30s, after in the 40s,
Honest-
after when everything came back,
Do you
that's
think-
all him.
Do you think
When America was at
Zachariah
its
Garthwaite
strongest.
would have allowed the United States to remain neutral in World War II for so long before getting involved in the
Absolutely, he
conflict?
would have. Next question. I do want to point out that actually the Great
That agrees with
Depression
my theory.
is the best argument anyone has made for Dick Bitterson is the war on Christianity # Merry Christmas's
That's right.
suggestion that he did remain president. Because if
Yeah.
he weren't
Thank
president,
you.
how would the Great Depression
Finally.
have happened? He would have
Right.
caused it.
Dick Bitterson
But,
is
To bring the
I would
country
like
right
to
back
say,
up.
the best
He's a
counter
roller
argument that
coaster.
I can think of against that counter argument is that Fairweather Sugar is still a fairly prominent company, correct? I
Right,
believe that
Fairweather
is a
survived
direct
the Great Depression.
result.
Why
It's in my
would
Well,
they
we know we
survive?
fixed things.
Why
as
would
a
they
direct
result.
survive the
result
Great Depression?
of
Who do you
the
think was giving a little bit
aggressive
extra
positions of other
government
companies
subsidies
that
for his
Garthwaite
his beloved
engaged
wife's
in while he
family?
ran the
Who
company?
do you think kept it open?
First of all, I want to be clear that Fairweather Sugar, while where my family's wealth came from, is by then far from our only company. The other companies could simply bail out the sugar company.
How did they all stay
Fairweather
afloat?
Sugar
How
is
did they all
one
stay
of the
afloat during the
biggest
Great
sugar
Depression?
companies, if not the biggest global
It
sugar
is
company
the
at the
biggest
time.
sugar company.
Well,
Where
and
other
you
companies-
have to-
I will say Fairweather Sugar has the best brown sugar I've ever had.
Their
And-
brown
and
sugar,
goddamn
their
right.
white sugar, their white sugar leaves a lot to
I
be
mean, I
desired.
hate this one.
Have you
I
tried
actually-
the
I-
turbinado?
I don't
I
use
prefer. I
Never.
actually do prefer the turbinado.
We make excellent turbinado.
I prefer the turbinado. But back to the topic on hand.
Right.
You would argue that could you argue then that Fairweather Sugar, its success is a direct result of Garthwaite's management, because it is very difficult for a
absolutely.
company to reach that level of prominence without
Obviously.
centuries of
It was work.
Centuries. Thank you.
There were
Right.
centuries of work prior to that.
Not
Right.
And then
centuries.
he
You said
almost
200
ran it
years.
into the ground,
That's only
and then
2
we
centuries.
fixed it.
No.
After-
No. Beatrice
Look, if
Feather almost
Garthwaite
ran into
had
it.
been left in charge of Fairweather Sugar any longer, it would have gone out of business.
Which
even
is
with our
why
other
your
companies
family
doing that.
tried to
Well,
kill
you've
him
never
so many
had-
times. It's just so
I would
obvious.
never
I would
had-
say
Such classic
Closely they've
Fairweather
been
Sugar
recognized, it
products.
would be the
Right,
United States
right.
of sugar.
You've never had such classic Fairweather Sugar products as Fairweather pure cane sugar, Fairweather
Disgusting.
light brown sugar,
It's all
Fairweather
right.
dark brown sugar, Fairweather raw sugar,
Taking the
Is this an
Fairweather
ad? We
fancy
already did
pink
the
sugar,
ads. Oh my god.
Fairweather
But,
sugar
Mr.
for the fancy,
Mr.
Fairweather.
Mr. Fairweather.
Yes.
Not interested.
I would like to say that Fairweather Sugar during Garthwaite's time existed
Yes.
in the time of Standard Oil as well. Would you not argue then that Fairweather Sugar's success is in avoiding acquisition by Standard Oil? The only way to avoid acquisition is to become a successful company at the time of Standard Oil, correct? The only way that Fairweather Sugar could have survived to the present day is if it had survived
Because it had a patron
um,
behind the scenes keeping
it could have
keeping it safe.
survived the Rockefeller years, so to
That's right.
speak, where American business was incredibly
That's right.
predatory.
Yes, we were right there alongside the
You
Rockefellers
think
and the
that-
Vanderbilts and the Astors.
Don't you think that Garthwaite
sugar
had
baron.
something to do with it, considering
saying it
how
was oil
involved he
and
was
sugar?
at the top of the company?
I don't know how many times and ways I can say no, I don't think that.
I
You
feel like
don't
So
wait.
you-
try
Wait, I'm
looking
asking.
at
is
it
there
from-
oil and sugar?
What?
Is there oil and sugar?
No. No, there's
Oh,
no
okay.
oil and
Molasses-
sugar.
That
That
is
would
that-
be
looks kind of like
inedible.
oil.
Mr.
I thought he was
Fairweather,
saying
Mr.
that
Fairweather,
converged
Dr.
with
Fleeb.
Rockefeller and started putting oil
Mr.
with the sugar.
like Reese's
Mr.
peanut
Fairweather,
butter
Mr.
cup, but like you
Fairweather,
got my sugar, you
You
got
You
your
don't
sugar and my
need the oil business and the sugar
Got my
business to
oil
be the
and your
same
sugar.
business.
Dr. Fleeb, Mr. Fairweather, if you
We-
would like to discuss
I
this
don't
topic
understand how it
further
works. I
about
just
oil
know
and
that
sugar,
they're-
I would like to get back to the topic on hand of Garthwaite.
which is the
if you would like to
Fairweather's attempted
discuss
assassinations multiple
this topic
times of
further,
Rufus Garthwaite.
I
I'd
will
love to get back on that
invite you
too.
to a future episode where we discuss the presence or the possible presence of oil and sugar, along with the possible presence of PFAs in coffee.
Rufus Garthwaite
Yes.
was the worst thing to happen to Fairweather Sugar since that time one of the vats in our Boston factory exploded.
I will respect your minority opinion,
When
Mr.
was
Fairweather,
that?
and thank you for
1919.
your time.
About a week and a half before.
Got it.
I will respect your right as a sovereign citizen to posit that minority opinion.
You can just tell him he's wrong.
Well,
It's your
that
show.
I like to keep it
Because Rufus
professional.
good
This
for the
is a
company.
platform of free speech, and you are allowed to speak your mind.
Mhm.
And Mr. Fairweather
I
has
mean,
every right to
of
say
course
that
he is.
Garthwaite
It's also
was,
allowed for,
uh,
everyone
he-
else to say he's wrong,
Right, which he is.
Look,
which he is.
he was the worst
Like,
thing
he's
to happen to
definitely-
one of our businesses since that one unfortunate
I
affair at
will
one of our
say-
blimp companies.
I will
It's
say
the
from a
same
purely
thing.
professional standpoint, or from personal standpoint, I disagree with you, Mr. Fairweather. But as the
Thank
host of this
you.
podcast,
Oh,
I would like to I would like to remind the audience, because I know the audience
Remind
does
the
have
audience
many,
that everyone on the show disagrees with Fairweather. That's
the
what we're
audience
Thank you.
is composed of a lot of
Fine.
Garthwaite fans, so I do want to give you a fair platform to speak your mind about it. However, keep in mind that many people who engage with the show also tend to have a very positive opinion on Rufus Garthwaite.
He was the worst thing to happen to a Fairweather company, since ice proved stronger than the products made by Fairweather Boat Steel Limited.
What?
What?
Which ice?
Mr. Fairweather,
Are you talking about
yes.
the natural element?
Yes,
talking about
are you
that big boat.
Your
that's,
company didn't.
I am.
the
something that
Lusitania.
was stronger than the natural element of ice, and you're upset about that.
Yes, ice tore a hole in a boat hull that Fairweather Boat Steel Limited had made.
Was it the Titanic?
Something like that. I was going to say the Gigantor.
if
I think
if
that's
The
we-
right.
1912, whatever it was.
Is-
If either of you choose Dr. Fleeb, Mr. Fairweather, I would also like to invite you to a future episode that I'm planning to do on the sinking of the Titanic and the Lusitania.
My knowledge on Titanic is sketchy. Lusitania, I actually know a lot about, surprisingly.
That's the money ship.
I would welcome your presence and your opinion on that show, Dr. Fleeb.
You should ask me about Queen Mary.
However,
Wait, now this is the first thing I've been interested in that anyone has said.
we're gonna have to say that for a future episode. I believe we are out of time. I would like to thank all of you for being here
You're welcome.
on Sect Respect today. It is,
Thank you.
despite outward appearances, it is always a pleasure to have guests of various calibers and of various professions to share their opinion on the show. To my audience and to our patrons, let us know what you think. Was Rufus Zachariah Garthwaite a victim of assassination? Or
I don't know
his
why
own
we're still going over this.
incompetency?
I feel like we all
or
said what we
I
you-
feel like this has
Um,
been
I
really
am opening
well
opening
settled.
the
shut
at this
it.
point.
audience to
Open
send
and shut
me
it.
lines
This
of their
is it.
opinions. Public
Discussion
participation
through the
is a
They're not the
major.
audience.
It is
They
my
are
podcast. I
fools.
get to
Because you
decide
have
what
your
the audience
stupid
gets involved.
crypto thing, of
Shut
course
up,
you care
Peter.
about them.
Shut up.
You shut up,
Shut up.
Louise.
He was too powerful.
You have your Lincolns and your Jacksons. Give me Garthwaite.
Garthwaite's story is the American story.
Garthwaite, a film by Ben Kurns.